Okay, let's dive right in. We are about to dismantle one of the most powerful and, frankly, one of the most draining illusions your mind creates. Today, we're not just talking about some flimsy mindset shift. No, we're installing a brand new operating system for social freedom, and it's all backed by science. The reason you constantly obsess over small mistakes and judgments is that you're trapped inside a powerful, hidden cognitive bias. We're going to show you the scientific proof that no one is watching, and how that realization, well, it instantly unlocks your freedom. This invisible force that kind of governs so much of our behavior, it's called the spotlight effect. And understanding it, I mean truly getting it, isn't just some interesting psychological fact. It is the key to taking bold, decisive action without that crippling fear of judgment. So, to get you there, we're going to move through this 6-part framework. First, we'll define the illusion itself. Then, we'll diagnose its heavy cost. After that, we'll install a system to make you feel invisible, understand the science that makes it all click, and then learn a precise 3-step protocol to apply it. And finally, we'll grasp the profound power that comes from being unnoticed. Let's get started. So, what is this core problem we're really trying to solve here? Well, it all starts with a fundamental error in our perception, this powerful, persistent illusion that we are constantly under a microscope. The official term is the spotlight effect. It's a cognitive bias where we just radically overestimate how much our actions and our appearance are noticed by other people. You see, your brain, it kind of tricks you into believing you're the main character in everyone else's movie. You walk into a room, you feel like all eyes are on you. You make one tiny mistake in a presentation, and you just assume everyone is still thinking about it. Look, this isn't just insecurity. It's a predictable, measurable error in how we perceive our social world. And here is the central paradox, the real kicker. The intense scrutiny, the harsh judgment, all those high expectations, they are not coming from some external audience. That audience is an illusion. The real obstacle, the true source of all that pressure, is the intense and absolutely exhausting self-monitoring you do to manage this imaginary audience. The cage is literally built from the inside. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Understanding the tangible, biological price you pay for living inside this illusion, this is not some harmless quirk of personality. It has a high cost that drains your most valuable resources. The problem can be boiled down to 2 words: chronic self-monitoring. Because you believe you're constantly being evaluated, your brain creates this invisible wall. It enters a state of high alert, a draining, continuous loop of checking. How do I look? What did they think of what I just said? Oh man, was that mistake noticeable? This isn't focus. It's a cognitive prison that just eats up your attention. And this prison, it has a biological toll. Every time you perceive a social threat, the fear of judgment or embarrassment or failure, your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, it just fires up. It can't tell the difference between a real threat, like a tiger, and an imagined one, like someone silently judging your outfit. So what does it do? It floods your system with cortisol, the main stress hormone. A constant low-grade fear of judgment means a constant low-grade drip of cortisol into your bloodstream, and that degrades performance, health, and clarity. So here's the crucial point. All this cognitive and biological stress leads to massive overload. Just look at this. This is where your most valuable mental resource, your working memory, goes. A huge portion, sometimes more than half, is diverted away from the deep, meaningful work you want to be doing, and it gets redirected toward managing the perceptions of this imaginary audience. You're spending precious cognitive fuel on a problem that doesn't even exist, which leaves you with depleted resources for the things that actually matter. Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem and its cost. Now let's pivot to the solution. This is going to require a precise 3-phase system designed to systematically confront and dismantle this illusion. And this isn't about positive thinking. This is about cognitive confrontation. It's about building a better argument that your brain simply can't ignore. Our system has 3 core tools. First up, evidence confrontation, where we use objective data to fight the bias. Second, the psychological zoom out, where we shift our perspective away from ourselves and onto the reality of others. And third, action reframing, where we change the meaning of our actions from these high-stakes performances into low-stakes experiments. This is a framework, a repeatable process to break the bias for good. Okay, phase 1, evidence confrontation. The spotlight effect is an emotional bias, and you cannot fight an emotional bias with emotional arguments. You have to fight it with cold, hard data. Just look at this table. This is the prediction audit. You make a concrete prediction. I believe 50% of the people in this room will notice I'm nervous. Then you go and gather objective data. The data, and I mean consistently, proves your prediction is wildly inflated. Study after study shows the number is almost always less than half of what you predict. You think 50%? The reality is almost always under 25%. This isn't an opinion, it's a fact. And repeating this drill trains your brain to stop trusting its flawed, fearful predictions. This leads us right into phase 2, the psychological zoom out. After you've confronted your own internal fears with data, the next move is to radically shift your focus. You stop asking, how do I look? And instead you ask this really powerful question about your so-called audience. What is their internal world actually preoccupied with? And the answer is always, unequivocally, one word: themselves. This is the cognitive trick that breaks the spell. Every single person in that room is the star of their own movie. They are not background actors in yours. They are worried about their own mortgage, their own deadlines, their own insecurities, and what you think of them. Realizing this isn't cynical, it's liberating. The spotlight you feel is just the glare from your own internal monologue. And this realization leads beautifully to our final phase, action reframing. Once you accept that no one is really watching, the stakes for every action just plummet. A feared presentation is no longer a final judgment on your worth. It becomes a low-stakes experiment to test a new idea. Asking a dumb question becomes a data-gathering exercise to clarify a point. This reframe removes the paralyzing fear of visible failure because you now have the evidence that failure is rarely as visible as you think. It encourages a bias toward action. Now, let's look under the hood. Why is this 3-part system so ruthlessly effective? Well, it works because it directly targets the underlying psychological and neurological mechanisms that create the anxiety in the first place. This is where we go from tactics to true transformation. There are 3 core reasons for its power. First, it dramatically reduces your cognitive load. By proving the audience doesn't exist, you stop wasting mental energy managing them. That frees up your mental bandwidth for what actually matters. Second, it calms your amygdala, the brain's fear center. When the perceived social threat disappears, the cortisol alarm turns off, turning down the volume on your anxiety. And third, as a result of the first 2, it systematically increases your tolerance for taking risks. It encourages you to step outside your comfort zone because the perceived consequences have basically vanished. This slide really shows the transformation. Before you implement this framework, you're in a state of high cognitive load, just burning through your executive function. Your cortisol levels are elevated, fueling anxiety, and you're highly risk-averse, avoiding anything that could lead to judgment. But after you install the system, your executive function is conserved for what matters. Your stress hormones lower, creating a state of calm focus. And your self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to act, it grows, which naturally makes you more willing to take those crucial risks that are necessary for growth. So we understand the illusion, we get the cost, we have the system, and we know the science behind it. But look, this can't just be an intellectual exercise. The entire point is to make it real. And that brings us to the most important question of all. How do we integrate this knowledge into a daily practice? How do we put this science into immediate, practical action? This is where the rubber meets the road. The science works, but only if you apply it. So I'm now going to give you a precise, non-negotiable protocol for implementation. These aren't suggestions. These are the steps you take to claim the freedom of being unnoticed, starting today. The protocol has 3 steps. First, you're going to run the pre/post prediction audit before any high-stakes event. This means before you go in, you write down your specific fear and predict what percentage of people will notice it. After, you find a way to get objective feedback and see how you did. This is your training. Steps 2 and 3 are your in-the-moment tools. Second, you use the psychological zoom-out cue the moment you feel that anxiety spike. And third, you execute a freedom launch on one task you've been avoiding. Let's break down those last 2. Step 2 is your emergency brake for anxiety. When you feel that heat of the spotlight, that surge of social fear, you have to immediately ask yourself this exact question. What is the most important problem the person next to me is actually thinking about right now? This question works like a pattern interrupt. It forces your brain out of its self-obsessed loop and onto an external, more empathetic track. It instantly reduces the intensity of the spotlight because it reminds you of the glorious, self-absorbed nature of other people. And for step 3, the freedom launch, you need a mantra. Choose one action you've been avoiding out of fear of judgment. Could be speaking up in a meeting, publishing something you wrote, whatever. Before you do it, repeat this mantra. This is a hypothesis I am testing. Nobody will remember this by next Tuesday. This frames the action not as a performance to be judged, but as a simple, low-stakes experiment, whose outcome will be forgotten by almost everyone almost immediately.
We've covered the entire system, and it all leads to one final, incredibly powerful takeaway. This is the single most important lesson from this entire masterclass, the core truth that unlocks everything else. Your greatest freedom lies in the massive, glorious truth that nobody is thinking about you. And that isn't a depressing thought. It's the most liberating realization you can possibly have. It means you are free. Free to try, to fail, to experiment, to be awkward, to learn in public. All that energy you've been wasting managing an imaginary audience can now be channeled into the actions that truly build the life you want.
So let's do a quick recap. This system we've covered, it solves the deep-seated problems of social anxiety and risk aversion. And it matters because it gives you a systematic way to free up the massive amounts of mental energy that are being consumed by the fear of judgment. How do we do it? Through our framework of evidence confrontation and the psychological zoom out. And the mechanism behind it all is that this process calms your brain's fear center, your amygdala, and as a direct result, increases your tolerance for taking those necessary risks. I want to leave you with this final thought. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about mastering systems that make focus effortless. This framework is one of those systems. It removes a major source of cognitive friction, allowing you to direct your energy where it will have the most impact. So here is your challenge. Not next week, not someday, tomorrow. Commit to conducting one pre/post prediction audit. Pick one meeting, one interaction. Write down your prediction, then find a way to check it with reality. This is your first step out of the spotlight and into your freedom. The only question left is, are you ready to reclaim your focus?